Hey everyone, happy mid-March and welcome to More Layers again. I'm Seth Mariano.
And I'm Jordan Smith, and this is being recorded a day after St. Patrick's Day. So happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody.
Yeah. Um, so, we're just a little over a week, 8 days really, when we're recording this from our annual Artists Unlimited cast reunion, where they're going to announce what the show coming up in the fall is going to be, and we're going to get to see some people we haven't seen in a long time, and I think it's something I've been looking forward to.
Oh, I most certainly have been as well. I was waiting for the longest time for even them to make the announcement that the reunion was happening. And then they finally did. And of course, now we're trying to guess what the show is, because really we don't have much to go off of in terms of trying to pinpoint what it could be. Um, and of course, once they do finally say what the show is, people are going to immediately shift into trying to think, okay, who do we think is most likely to play such and such a character?
Right. Yeah, and I've been asking some friends, what do you think it's going to be? What would you want to see? And I've gotten a variety of responses. Like one guy said, Oliver or Porgy and Bess. One person said, and I love it when you guys do anything Disney. So
Sure.
yeah, easy win there. Well, one guy said maybe 101 Dalmatians, or if there is a musical of that, I'm guessing there isn't one that I'm aware of. Maybe there is.
I mean, if there is, I haven't heard of it.
Yeah.
But we usually seem to do a Disney production every other year or so. And since last year was Willy Wonka, which wasn't Disney, it's entirely possible that this year will be something Disney related.
All right. Well, so there's a good chance it'll be something Disney. We don't know yet. And speaking of Willy Wonka, we've got a little topic related to that coming up in a little bit. But before that, we're going to jump into our like big in-depth topic, and something that a lot of people have probably dreamed of or probably didn't had no idea was coming. It's not in the United States at least yet, but it just hit the Canadian McDonald's menu, and it is the Chicken Big Mac. Basically, the Big Mac with chicken in place of beef.
Now, do you normally, I don't know about normally being the right word, but do you ever eat at McDonald's?
Well, not quite as often as I used to. A lot of mornings, like if I was serving at the church, I would stop on the way and get some breakfast. I would do that. I know when I was a kid, it was like when I was really young, it was like almost a religion, and to go there every Friday, no, every Wednesday for kids' night.
No,
Yeah,
I don't remember that being a thing. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know if I ever went there on a regular basis. Sometimes we'd go a Sunday afternoon or some other day, depending on what we were doing. Um, and generally, I would end up getting the Big Mac. And I don't know if it's just me getting bigger or what, but to me, it looks like nowadays the Big Mac isn't as big as it once was. I
You
don't know
know,
if
I
that's
felt the same way, honestly.
okay. So it's not just me then. That's good to know because I swear it used to be about twice as thick, or maybe they just put more on it than they do now. It just looks so small in comparison to what I remember.
I kind of wonder if it has something to do with the flack related to obesity that the chain has gotten, like ever since like around the time of Super Size Me or something.
I mean, it's entirely possible, but I mean, they're still a fast food restaurant, so really, they can only do so much to minimize that sort of thing. but with it being a fast food, it would be nearly impossible to make it stop altogether.
No. Well, anyway, so the Chicken Big Mac, it first debuted in Australia in 2017, and it just hit the Canadian menu on March 7th. So far, there is no word yet on whether or not it could be coming to the United States. Reportedly, McDonald's US has chosen to focus more on their more classic and famous items like the Big Mac, the Quarter Pounder, whatever, because that's what they say sells, which is kind of a no-brainer there.
It is definitely kind of a no-brainer because if you look at the fast food restaurants in general, uh, McDonald's I think is the one that changes their menu the least. Like they're the most consistent with what they sell, at least around here in the U.S. Because places like Burger King or Wendy's or even Arby's, I might try to throw something new at you. Um, I think at one point Burger King was using Cheetos for their fries or something to that effect. Of course, Taco Bell, they use a Dorito taco shell. Um, yeah, I don't recall McDonald's really altering their menu too much over the years. So, I mean, if it's selling, don't fix what ain't broke.
Now, there seems to be like a trend of frequently making creative efforts to introduce some more innovative items, but for the most part, I guess if the classics are selling good, then don't touch them, I guess.
Well, sure. And I mean, it probably would be all right to change things up every once in a while, but at the same time, you don't want to go too far out to create something that's completely unrecognizable or something that you couldn't see being connected back to your brand. So it's kind of a risky play.
Well, I did quite a bit of research, and it kind of probably factors in. I'm just saying that with the sort of unlikelihood of the Chicken Big Mac becoming an American thing. I did look up. I'm going to put all the links later in the description. There's one page I saw uh, that listed the top 15 selling McDonald's items. A web page from just recently, March 5th, and it's a ranking of sales from the week leading up to that. And only 5 out of those 15 items incorporated or could incorporate chicken, and only 2 of them made the top 5. So I guess that means the chance of a chicken Big Mac, at least in the near future, is about as high as 33 to 40%, I guess.
Yeah, statistically speaking, it's less than probable. It's not impossible, though. Maybe they'll try to do it at a certain time when popularity for it has really spiked, or maybe during a certain time period. But yeah, it's not looking too good to bring it over here. We'll have to see. The one thing I did want to ask though is, does this particular list cover sales across the globe or in a certain region?
Let's see. I believe, if I remember correctly, I don't know. I don't know if it. I don't know if it really is exclusive to one country. I don't know. I just. Only remember Googling top selling items at McDonald's and getting this list as a result. So
Okay.
I'm thinking it could be just the United States, but I don't remember for sure. But I'll have the link in the description so everyone can confirm that.
Okay, and if if what you were saying implies that the chicken Big Mac wasn't even on that list, then yeah, it's probable that it's only covering the United States. But in any case, again, like I said earlier, a chicken Big Mac in the US, not likely, but it's still possible.
Right. Yep. And so, and then, and over the past few months, I found from over the past few months a few other links. One from July, I, I lists the most popular fast food brands around the world, and the leader was reported to be KFC.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising to me, and I only say that because I myself have rarely ever gone there, not because I don't want to, but it's not usually on my list of priorities like I got to go to KFC. Um, but I know it has been popular with a lot of other people for one reason or another. So that doesn't surprise me too much.
All right. Well, and then specifically relating to the United States, according to a report from August, only one of the top 10 selling fast food brands, again in the United States, specializes in chicken items. Only 1 in 10.
Well, I mean, I guess that would imply that they specialize in chicken, but that doesn't necessarily mean none of the other ones use chicken. It's just not their main focus. So out of the ones that specialize in chicken, the only ones I can think of are, of course, KFC, like we just talked about, and Chick-fil-A. But I don't know if there's another one I'm not thinking of.
Um, well, there's Popeyes.
Popeyes, that's true. I
Yeah.
don't know if I don't know if I ever went to Popeyes. I know at one point they took the world by storm when they introduced this sandwich that everybody was going nuts for, maybe too nuts in some ways. But yeah, I feel like I went to Popeyes at least once, maybe. I'd have to think about that.
Let's say, well, anyway, you mentioned Chick-fil-A, and that actually ties into another link I found from October that reports that Chick-fil-A is actually reportedly the favorite restaurant of Generation Z. For anyone who doesn't know, Generation Z is often considered anybody born as early as the year 2000 and as late as 2020. So anyone born from the year 2000 to 2020 is considered often a Gen Z person. And so
Okay.
according to this, their favorite restaurant is Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, I'm at least glad you clarified what Gen Z is because I never fully understood what some of those terms meant. But now that makes a little more sense to me. Um, and it doesn't surprise me too much that Chick-fil-A is among the favorites because, especially in our village town area, when a new one opened, what was it, like a year or two ago?
Yes, somewhere around that.
Yeah, when that first opened up, you could drive by there, and the drive-through lines, especially, would be overflowing. And so many people I saw just extremely excited that one was coming much closer to them because there weren't too many in our area. And I know Chick-fil-A is kind of the subject matter of some controversies, but that's a subject matter for another day. Um, but yeah, basically, doesn't surprise me too much that Chick-fil-A would be one of the top ones in America.
Yeah, they do kind of have a bit of a reputation for being politically extremist. I'm not sure how accurate that is or not, but I'll just leave it at that.
I was about to say maybe we can talk about that at another time, but this subject matter can often get really sketchy and divisive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, uh, I decided to kind of do some research or crunch some numbers to kind of make a case for or why chicken would be kind of more profitable or make more sense to try to experiment with for an alternative version of the Big Mac. And so I crunched some numbers and figured out. I'm not sure how spot on this is. I concluded that beef costs $4.81 a pound in the past year, and the typical amount of beef in a Big Mac is 3.2 ounces, which would be, if I crunch my numbers right, $15.39 worth. And a Big Mac would cost $5.15, which would mean a 34-cent break even. And so if a McDonald's restaurant sold 100 Big Macs in a day, right there, that's a $34 profit. Again, I'm not totally sure how accurate that is, but it was as close as I could get.
I was about to say you did some research and you did some calculations, so it definitely sounds accurate to me. And of course, the cost of things change all the time with inflation or some other things going on. So those numbers could change by the time some people see this. Who knows?
All right, so keep that in the back of your head. And I decided to do some rough number crunching on chicken for comparison or contrast. And I came to the conclusion that chicken cost $1.83 a pound in 2022. And a typical breaded McDonald's chicken patty is 63 grams of chicken, which would be 0.138891 pounds, and that would be 25 cents worth. A chicken Big Mac would therefore or supposedly involve 126 grams of chicken or 50 cents worth, which I believe would probably mean a saving of $14.89. So I think there might be a benefit to this.
It could very well be the case. The one thing I wondered though is, would the chicken Big Mac have just the chicken or would the beef be on there too? Because I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know.
Well, I guess I would assume there would be no beef. It would be replaced by the chicken. That would be
Okay.
my thinking. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, I would have thought that too, but I wasn't entirely sure, so I thought I'd ask. But yeah, mostly any chicken sandwich that I can think of, it's just the chicken, whereas the beef is omitted completely. But who knows? They might try to throw something together, see what sticks.
Yeah. Well, on occasion they'll throw in like like bacon on top of it, like the bacon cheddar McChicken, which I have eaten, another McDonald's item. But yeah, for the most part, our chicken tends to be the sole meat, like anything else would.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's it for that. On to our traditional curious question, and again, this is in light of the last musical we did, the last Artists Unlimited musical, Willy Wonka, and I got to thinking about, you know how like NBC has done a bunch of live television musicals, and a couple other networks, or at least one other, has done it in the past.
Mhm.
I got to thinking of this question. If the Willy Wonka musical we did was done on network TV or made into a feature film, who would you want to see playing what role?
All right, so I did compile a list for this one. There were a couple characters I left out because I couldn't think of a solid portrayal, and I didn't want to constantly use some of our own cast for some of these roles, which I did for some of them. Um, so if there's a character that seems to be missing, it's because I couldn't think of one. Um, so for Wonka, I thought of three separate people. The first of the three I thought of was Hugh Jackman. And the reason for that is because when we were doing it, I kind of joked how my costume kind of looked like Hugh Jackman as P.T. Barnum from The Greatest Showman, and I would sometimes sing the opening song backstage before the show started just to be funny. So then I thought about it, and I'm thinking, Hugh Jackman has done some musical stuff before, and he's worn a costume like Wonka's before, like in Greatest Showman. So I feel it wouldn't be too far out of the question for him to do Wonka, especially when it comes to the singing. When it comes to Wonka's somewhat cynical side, that may be slightly different, but I still feel like overall he could do it justice.
Yeah, I thought that was an easy choice. I also myself said Hugh Jackman,
Sure.
probably because we had talked about it in person in the past and thought, yeah, maybe Jackman, and pretty much for the same reason. Think back to like footage I've seen of Greatest Showman, of specifically Jackman as Barnum. So yeah,
So he was my top choice. The other two, or at least the first of the two that I thought of, one of them was Neil Patrick Harris. And I thought of
hmm,
him because I feel like he could do a lot of the same type of movements that Wonka did, particularly thinking back to Gene Wilder when he did that tuck and roll to surprise everybody. Because at first he was like limping, and then he did the roll and being like, actually, I'm like this. I feel like he could overall do the character really well, and his experience in musicals would definitely help.
yeah. Is he been on Broadway?
I believe he has. I'm trying to remember a specific show he was in. I can't remember if it was like Dear Evan Hansen or something similar to that, but I do remember seeing snippets of his onstage performances. Don't know if it was Broadway, but I'm pretty sure he has.
Yeah, probably my favorite memory of him is uh, that one year when he hosted the Oscars and opened it with that sort of Broadway style original number. I don't know if
Yep.
you remember that.
I do
Yeah,
remember it. I just don't remember most of the details. Like I couldn't picture it too well, but I do remember it happening.
yeah. I think it was the year that Birdman won Best Picture. So
Okay.
I forget which year that was. It was like probably early 2010s. And anyway, um, um, I just remember Harris having this great delivery, great energy, that uh, sort of vibe that I think would go with the Wonka character.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And the last person I thought of, some people might not think of this one, but I thought of Tom Hiddleston. For those who don't know him by name, you might recognize some of his performances. Like one of his most iconic roles in recent history is portraying Marvel Cinematic Universe's Loki. And I thought of him because I've actually seen some clips of him singing, and he's actually really, really good. You wouldn't think of that if you've only seen him as Loki, but he's a really good singer. And then, of course, being Loki, he can naturally play that cynical, kind of goofy side as well as being serious. Like he's shown that he can portray all the different parts of Wonka's character. So I feel like he would just naturally be able to put them all together and do excuse me, really well as Willy Wonka.
It is kind of a nice surprise when you see an actor doing a gig that doesn't involve singing, and then you hear them singing somewhere, and you had no idea. That's kind of cool.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And when I found him singing, it's like, you know what? I didn't know he could, but I'm glad I know now.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah. Then I thought, who could play Augustus Gloop? Uh, and the one person outside of our cast that I thought of was an actor by the name of Jeremy Ray Taylor. I don't know if he's one of the more well-known actors or not, but I remember seeing shots of him as the kid known as Ben in the recent It films. I never saw the second one, but I think that's when they're grown up anyway, so I don't know if he would have reprised his role. Um, but Ben, the character, is one of those stereotypically, shall I say, bigger characters, and I feel like Jeremy Ray Taylor just portrayed that well. And I don't mean that as like a slap in the face, backhanded compliment or anything. I just think he did really well. Uh, and just based off the way he did his performance and the way his character looked, I feel like that could translate well to Augustus Gloop. Hopefully, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, but I don't intend it as a bad thing. I mean it as a good thing.
Yeah, I think. Well, and I haven't really intently watched those It movies myself, but I guess I will just take your word on that one.
Yeah, I never saw the Tim Curry It stuff. I saw the one from 2017 because a friend asked me to watch it with him. Uh, I was kind of skeptical going in because, horror movies are not typically my go-to. But honestly, I know it's supposed to be scary, but I kind of found myself laughing more than anything else. I know a lot of people, they would still be freaked out by this character, and understandably so. But I just wasn't that creeped out. Um, but yeah, I could still see this actor as Augustus.
All right.
Now, when it comes to his mom, Mrs. Gloop, there were a couple people I thought of. I wasn't too sure on this one, but I was thinking maybe Rebel Wilson. Like I
Yeah, I
don't
suppose. I know she's Australian. She's done a lot of American accents. I don't know how good her German would be, but
see
I
that's
suppose she could do it.
yeah, that's part of the reason I was a little skeptical is because I don't know if she can do a solid German accent or not. But if she could, then that could really help her if she were to portray this character. And I feel like she's shown that she can play a character with her kind of attitude before. So if she can pull off the German accent, then I think she could do it justice.
Yeah, I'm open to the possibility.
Okay. And then for very similar reasons, I thought of Meryl Streep. Now, Meryl Streep, she's also done some musical type of stuff, kind of like how Rebel Wilson has before. So I know they have that skill. And I also feel like she could do the role justice if she was directed in the right way or given the right direction. That is probably the proper phrasing. But like with Rebel Wilson, if she can do a solid German accent, it could be believable.
Yeah, Streep is notorious for doing a variety of accents in a variety of films over the years. So, yeah, if she pulled it off, it probably wouldn't be too much of a surprise.
Sure.
Yeah.
Then I thought, who could play Mr. Salt? This one took me a little bit because there were quite a few different possibilities, like reverting back to our own cast. But the person I thought of ultimately was Jim Cummings. Some people may not know who he is, but I feel like it is way more than likely that they've heard some of his characters' voices before. Because he's kind of like Mel Blanc. He just has the ability to use his voice in many, many different ways. Uh, so I feel like is versatile enough that he could do a character like this really well. And if people are worried about him singing, what they might not know is that he sang part of Be Prepared from the animated Lion King. Not the entire thing, but like the last third or so. Because apparently Jeremy Irons, after he did the line, "You won't get a sniff without me," his voice was kind of shot. So Jim Cummings took over. And if you listen closely after that line, you can hear the difference. Otherwise, you may not notice. And that's just how good he is. He can do all these different characters and he can flip flop between them with a snap of his fingers, pretty much. So I feel like his versatility, along with just like the way I hate to use people's appearances when talking about portraying a character because I don't want to make it sound like a stereotypical thing or if I'm judging somebody by their appearance. I'm just saying
Sure.
he could look like a Mr. Salt and pair it with his versatility in his voice. I could totally see it.
Yeah. Some of you may know Cummings for being the longtime voice of both Winnie the Pooh and Tigger, who themselves are, in a way, well, like pretty opposite characters. Like on one side, you've got the more innocent and more soft-spoken bear, and then on the other side, you've got the really energetic tiger. So, I think he does have some versatility.
Well, he definitely has. He's also been. I could write a whole list just on the characters he's portrayed alone. But if you've heard him as Winnie the Pooh, then you've probably heard him as Kaa the snake from the Jungle Book because they're pretty much exactly the same in terms of how they sound. But he's also
Well,
done.
I think he was voiced the snake originally by the original voice actor for Winnie the Pooh, Sterling Holloway, and then I don't know if maybe Cummings did it for the sequel.
I know he did it at one point, and I only know this because when a video came out of him saying some lines from different characters, he did Winnie the Pooh, and then when they asked him to do Kaa, he's like, "Don't ask me to do Kaa. That's pretty much evil Pooh." Um, of course, he was saying it in a funny manner. He wasn't angry. Um, but I also know him as a voice of Darkwing Duck.
Right.
Uh, in fact, that kind of ties into the video I was just talking about because what they do is they take Darkwing Duck's arguably most iconic line, "Let's get dangerous," and they have him say that line as a bunch of his other characters, including say Pete from Disney. Um, so if people want to see even a sample of his versatility of what kind of voices he can do, go check out that video. I highly recommend it.
All right. Good thought there.
Yeah. Um, and then for Violet Beauregard, I looked and I noticed that this is another one Seth and I had uh, the same idea for, but I thought of Jenna Ortega. And I thought of her because I haven't seen the Wednesday show, but just seeing her in that costume and seeing some snippets of her acting as this character, I feel like she could take some of that and bring it over to the type of character that Violet Beauregard is. So, like, I don't know much else about her. I just looked at her in Wednesday and thought, you know what? I could see a lot of that being transferred over to Violet.
I chose Ortega as Violet as well. I'm not totally sure why. Maybe it had something to do with like uh, some bits of her performing her role on Disney Channel's Stuck in the Middle, and maybe um, her sort of goth vibe from the promotional material for Wednesday. I mean, maybe a mix of that.
Sure.
And so I think maybe for that reasoning, I would probably kind of recommend her.
Makes total sense. I mean,
Yeah.
I can definitely agree with you. I said the same person.
Yeah.
Um, then for Miss TV, I'll get to Mike in a little bit, but
Okay.
I'm bringing up Miss TV first. And the actress I thought of, I really had to think about this one because I wasn't entirely sure, but I ultimately settled on Kate Blanchett. I thought of either her or Michelle Pfeiffer, but Kate Blanchett, she was, for example, uh, trying to think of her name now because I haven't thought about it in a while. But she was the villain in Thor Ragnarok, who was also the sibling to Thor and Loki. And like the type of attitude she carries through that film is another one I feel like would translate over to a character, in this case, Miss TV, to a Willy Wonka production. Certainly not as evil, but she still has some form of sophistication, doesn't like when things don't go the way she would expect them to. So that could work. Michelle Pfeiffer, something very similar. Might know her as Catwoman from Batman Returns, I think it was the sequel to the original Batman movie starring Michael Keaton. She also has played the mother, not the mother. Hang on.
I was thinking of Velma and Hairspray when
Yeah,
you
that was
said when
another
you said
one.
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah, that was another one. And I'm trying to remember her character's name in the Ant-Man films because I recently saw the newest Ant-Man film, and she had a lot of screen time as her character. And then, like combining some of her previous roles together, I feel like she could do Miss TV justice.
Okay.
And for the last character I thought of in terms of celebrities portraying them was Grandpa Joe. There were certainly a few that I thought of, but one that I settled on was Christopher Lloyd.
Hmm.
Excuse me. And I thought of him partly because of course, his portrayal as Doc in Back to the Future. Um, and there was another movie that he starred in with, I think it was Hulk Hogan, actually. I can't remember the name offhand, but he's got this kind of energy that I feel is very similar to Grandpa Joe's, where he might start off as kind of low down, defeated, not really doing a whole lot, but once he really gets going, I could see Christopher Lloyd, especially when comparing him to the 1971 Grandpa Joe. I feel like he could portray the character in a very similar fashion.
I do actually kind of like the sound of that, considering like, his energetic presence as Doc Brown in Back to the Future. So, yeah, I think I might have to somewhat agree with you there.
Great. I mean, I could totally see it, but if they ever make another Wonka movie, which I wouldn't be surprised if they did, and I'm talking about the ones like the 1971 version or even the Johnny Depp version, not the prequel type film that's coming out in the future. Um, so for the last few, and there was like three of them, I thought of characters being played by some of the people in our cast because after seeing them doing these characters, I have a tough time picturing anybody else doing them. And I thought back to Veruca, and she was played by our good friend Jenna. Now,
Yes.
Jenna, who, for anyone who hasn't seen her portray characters in our Artist Unlimited production before, she is just really good at playing a character that is sassy or just downright nasty, evil. And again, I don't mean that as a bad thing or as a typecast type of deal, but I'm just saying that's one type of character, one variety of a character that she just happens to be really good at. And then, of course, when she was cast as Veruca, I thought she was going to ace it. And of course, she did. Like, she was just so much fun to watch. It's like if they ever brought Wonka to network TV or made it into another feature film, I could really see Jenna doing it.
And don't feel bad for her. If you ask her how she feels about being cast as villains, she'll tell you she loves it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's, of course, played Ursula in our production of The Little Mermaid. She was, I forget her actual name, but she was Mr. Banks' old nanny in Mary Poppins, and her nickname was the Holy Terror. She portrayed the dragon, which wasn't necessarily evil, but still in this adaptation had a bit of sass. Um, but when it comes to not fitting into that type of character, she at one point when we did Wizard of Oz, she was the Cowardly Lion, which isn't really sassy or evil, but she still did really well. So she has shown she can be versatile, but she can still be really good at portraying this kind of character. So if I had the opportunity, I would be telling network TV or whoever to cast her again because she just does it so well.
Yeah. Okay.
And like I said, I was going to circle back to Mike TV, and I thought of our very own Anthony Vigneri. He is what's the best way to describe him? Like he is a great guy. He's a great kid. But he was still able to portray Mike TV's character with absolute justice. Like if you ever talk to him normally in a real life setting, he's just a sweet guy. Like you can't help but have a fun conversation with him. He and his family are just wonderful people. So you wouldn't think he would play a nasty, spoiled rich kid really well, but somehow he was able to pull it off. And by no means am I complaining. He's another one of those actors when he really nails a role, which he always does. He's just such a joy to watch. Like it's kind of the same for when he played the Prince Eric's butler in The Little Mermaid. So much fun to watch. In fact, he had one or two lines that I always laughed whenever he said them because he always made it so enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah. Anthony is a good friend. He always goes out there. I think gives it 110%, and he. I think he's different. Probably one of the best friends you could have.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Then the last character I thought of was Phineas Trout. And if people have been paying attention to what I've been saying, then you know exactly where this is going. For those that don't, I thought of our very own Seth Mariano, aka you, my good man. Because
Yeah.
as I've said on this show before, and pretty much whenever I'm talking about the show with my friends or family or whoever, Seth here just did such a phenomenal job bringing this character to life. Because I mean, I had seen the 1971 news reporter It's like he was okay. He was your standard news reporter type of character. But you, Seth, you just made it so much fun. You made the story sound exciting. Thus, you got the audience excited. And just your sheer presence really helped push other characters along. Because some of the characters, they would be prompted by something that you said or what you did. So really, not only did you portray this character really well, but you helped other characters, or rather other actors, portray their characters really well. And a prime example is at the beginning of the second act, when you introduced Willy Wonka, aka myself, the way you would announce my character walking through the gate, you did it in such a manner that you got the audience roaring. And not many people could do that. So if there's anybody that can somehow get a copy of our production of Willy Wonka, I definitely would recommend watching Seth's performance, if nothing else, because it is a blast.
Yeah, friends, come on by. We'll watch it together. I'll tell you about it. Whatever. Come
For
on,
sure.
come on by.
Yep,
Yeah, well, it is an honor. Thank you, Jordan.
of course.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I had quite a long list myself. And as we kind of hinted at earlier, we both settled on the same persons for Wonka and Violet. I had a variety of others that came to mind for other roles, and one that the one that I landed on for Augustus Gloop was actually Devin Werkheiser. A lot of you may know him as the star of the Nickelodeon series Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. He,
Oh.
yeah, he's like, yeah, he has this sort of kind of energetic, goofy delivery about him. Oftentimes, when he's acting on screen, that's pretty much fits with the Augustus, is at least how he was written in the stage musical we did. So I think that would work.
Okay, because I definitely didn't recognize the name immediately when you said it. But once you said the name of that show and what character he was, it's like, you know what? I could actually see it. Granted, I didn't grow up with the station that had that show, but I can still kind of picture his character a little bit. And based off what you're telling me, as well as that, I would have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, well, admittedly, I didn't really have cable growing up, at least probably not until like we got our current hookup with Sling. But I did, every now and then see Nickelodeon cartoons and stuff off of blank cassette or off of or some other place. So you're not alone in that, actually.
Okay, good. Yeah, I didn't really have channels like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, etc. So I'd have to either base my knowledge of pictures or brief clips that I saw, or I might have happened to watch it at a friend's house when I was visiting them. So my knowledge on him is limited, but based off what you're telling me, I could see it.
Yeah. 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 And this was probably an extremely easy one. Well, at least in the minds of the audience watching, listening to this. I thought of for Mrs. Gloop, Caroline Ray, whom you may know as the mom on TV series Sabrina the Teenage Witch, or you may know her as that recurring role of the rival hotel manager, owner, whatever, on The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody with the strong German accent.
Yeah, that's a character, again, I don't know a lot of, but I do remember her in at least one or two episodes that I actually did see. And I remember her having a similar character style as Mrs. Gloop. So, yeah, based on what I remember, I could see it. And maybe if I refreshed my memory on her character a little more, then I would be able to agree with it a little more strongly.
Yeah. I'll take this is one you might not be on board with at least immediately. Like, and it probably came to me a little more easier because, as I probably mentioned in the past, I'm a fan of the Netflix series Cobra Kai, and I thought of one specific actress from that show, Mary Mouser, who is Ralph Macchio's daughter on the show, Samantha. That's like she. That's like I think when she really wants to vocally get indignant, I think she can do that. That's something I think the role of Veruca really needs to work. So I would probably say Mary Mouser.
All right, yeah, I definitely have not seen Cobra Kai. Some people have recommended it to some degree, but yeah, I haven't gotten around to it. Uh, but based off what you're telling me, she sounds like she could portray this character really well, or at least get Veruca's attitude across in a very solid fashion. So maybe I'll be able to check some of her performance out later and build something off of that. But yeah, I based off what you're telling me, it sounds like a solid idea. I just personally have not seen her perform much before.
Sure. Yeah. And when it came to Mr. Salt, that was a bit of a challenge. I was kind of digging pretty deep in my head for this, and finally I landed on well, Will Ferrell, who probably needs no background. Saturday Night Live, Elf. I don't know. Maybe it's kind of because of his upbeat tone, sort of smirky vibe or whatever that kind of would make it work.
Yeah, I definitely know who Will Ferrell is. um, I have seen him on SNL. Of course, I know him from Elf, and I know there's at least a small handful of other things. I just, for some reason, I'm blanking on what they are. But he can be goofy, he can be serious, and Mr. Salt has moments of both. Like he can be kind of goofy, whether intentional or not, but he definitely, as a rich businessman, tries to be serious the vast majority of the time, even if most of the time he's just caving in to Veruca's demands. Yeah, Will Ferrell is definitely a good choice.
Yeah. Let's see. And then for or Ms. Beauregard, I kind of had a toss up here. And probably the first one that came to mind for that one was Kristen Chenoweth, star of Broadway and film and television. Like, wow, the accent, the attitude, the vibe. For kind of similar reason, Cheryl Hines, you may know from things like Curb Your Enthusiasm or Suburgatory. I, I, I've got the accent, the sort of tone. I don't know what else to say except, yeah, kind of for those reasons, those two.
Sure. I mean, I know Kristen Chenoweth a bit more than I do Cheryl Hines. So for the time being, I would probably lean more towards Kristen Chenoweth, but that's only because I'm more familiar with her work. But if I studied up more on both of them, then maybe that opinion will sway the other way, or maybe I'll end up more on the fence between the two. But for the time being, I'd probably lean more towards Chenoweth.
All right, that's fair. And taken then for Mike TV, I had another bit of a two-way toss-up here, and one person I thought of was more obscure actor Griffin Santopietro, and he is Ralph Macchio's son, Anthony, on Cobra Kai. He admittedly isn't really fleshed out or given much screen time for the first couple seasons or so, but then and then later on he gets a bit more focus and he comes off as a bit of a smirky, almost hostile young boy. So I think it probably fit for Mike TV there.
Okay, yeah. Again, I'm not familiar with these guys, but um, I'll definitely, if I remember, do some research on these actors and see if I can formulate an opinion for myself. But your opinion definitely sounds solid, so I'll take your word for it for now. And then at some point, if I think about it, I'll go back, do some of my own research, and see what I think.
Yeah. All right. There was one other person I thought of as a possibility for Mike TV, and his name is Finn Wolfhard. He is one of the child stars of Netflix's Stranger Things. Specifically, he plays the boy Mike Wheeler. And I don't know. He can have a bit of a similar attitude, I guess, and I think maybe that's the reason I also thought of him
For Mike?
for Mike TV. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that name definitely does ring a bell. I don't really remember from where, but I have heard that name before. I'll have to go on IMDb or something similar to kind of refresh my memory for what characters they've portrayed before and see if I can be like, okay, if he can play this character, then he could definitely play Mike.
Well, I just mentioned his role on Stranger Things.
Oh, that's true. I mean, I haven't seen Stranger Things, so I couldn't really comment too much on that.
Mm. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. This one, maybe not exactly as famous, but is nonetheless highly skilled, I think. And it is an actress. This is for Ms. TV. Probably a lot better known for acting in animation than in live action, though she does have some live action experience, though.
Sure.
And it is Catherine Tabor, who was um, who was a lead voice actress on Clone Wars and The Loud House. Yeah, and from the performances I've seen or heard from her, she can be as versatile as you would ever need, probably. She can sound really sad. She can sound happy enough. I think you'd probably have to maybe watch a reel or listen to a reel in order to be convinced, but I'm convinced myself.
All right. I had to double check this because I entirely sure which character she played, but it turned out that she was Padme in the Clone Wars, and I haven't watched Star Wars: The Clone Wars all the way through yet. I think I'm somewhere in season 3, season 4 at this point. Uh, but Padme has appeared quite a few times, and based on that role alone, because that's certainly something I know her from, I could really see her doing that sort of role for excuse me, for Miss TV.
Yeah, let's see. And then Charlie was probably the toughest one of all for me to do because there's not many, probably not that many actors that young that I know about
Right.
that could, or at least ones that I could believe doing it, maybe. But
Yeah.
I finally went with who. And I don't know if I've heard his portrayal yet. I mean, I've heard other actors do it, but I take my memories of the character of Lincoln being like energetic, very upbeat. So, and it's like I feel like, and innocent. So, I think I think if an actor can do that, they could do Charlie.
Sure. And Loud House, Nickelodeon, haven't really seen a lot of Nickelodeon stuff, especially recent. But there have been times where I would be house sitting or cat sitting for somebody, and I would have something like Nickelodeon, The Loud House, in the background while I'm doing other things. And I might sit down and watch an episode or two, and I remember Lincoln's character relatively well. And while I don't see the actual actor, I can still hear him and see uh, some of him through this character. Because usually, when it comes to animated characters now, uh, a trick animators like to use is incorporate some of the actual actors' movements or persona or what have you into the character they are voicing. So if that's the case, based off what I've seen of Lincoln, him as Charlie would actually be a pretty solid option.
Yeah, yeah. And then for Grandpa Joe, I thought, hmm, I don't quite remember what my thought process was. I think it's probably because it's been a while, but it was pretty tricky. Like, I think you want someone who's in a fairly old age and can have that vibe of upbeat positivity and energy. And I thought ended up landing on Tom Hanks.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. Now, I have not seen the remake of Pinocchio that came out last year, and based on what people are telling me, I'm not missing much. But I remember seeing clips of Tom Hanks as Geppetto, and based off what I've seen, I could see some of that being translated over to Grandpa Joe. And of course, Tom Hanks has played some surprisingly energetic or goofy characters that could also be translated into Grandpa Joe. And if he combines those elements together, I could totally see it.
yeah, yeah. And then I put to round out my list for Phineas or Phoebe Trout. This has actually been a varying gender role. Well, honestly, when we did it, it was a male. It was played by me, and and if they wanted me to, I'd be open to it. But but I remember when they were preparing us for the show, they actually sent us a video of a high school. I don't know where it's from, somewhere doing the same musical, Willy Wonka, and they had the journalist be a woman, actually. So they had a girl play the role, and and she went by the name of Phoebe Trout. If it were a male, Phineas Trout, I said Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Right.
Okay.
Uh, energy, attitude. So, or if it were Phoebe Trout, if it were female, I would I would say either uh, Allison Court, the Lunette the clown on the big comfy couch, or Molly Ephraim, probably best known for her role in the sitcom Last Man Standing with Tim Allen. So, they can be they can have these good emotional outbursts and peppy energy, and kind of bounce between those. So any one of those three.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree on that because I wasn't too familiar with who Allison Court was right off the bat. But once you said who she was, it's like if she were to be a female version of this character, she could really sell it. I really think she could. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, same thing. Malia Frame, again, same thing. Any one of those, I feel like, is a really solid option. I don't know if I have a preference between the three because I think all three of them could do really well at it.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and so, well, that's going to do it for today. Thanks everyone for streaming this. You can keep up with us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Facebook, and YouTube. And I'm gonna post this on Facebook and remind everybody to encourage them to chime in with, who would you want to see in these roles and your thoughts on the Chicken Big Mac. Anything else? Any questions, comments? Send them our way as you would like to.
Oh yeah, if you have a list of your own of people you would want to see playing these characters, whether it's a celebrity or someone you know, we'd love to hear it because I for one, I can definitely speak for myself here on this. I would definitely love to engage in that kind of conversation because I always, especially when it comes to our own shows, I'm always trying to think, okay, who would be really good at playing this character? Who'd be really good at playing this character? And of course, with all the Disney live action remakes, I've done something similar. It's like, who could they get to portray this character nowadays? So I love to engage in that conversation. So I would love to hear what you people have to say in terms of who you could see playing certain characters. And that's just one way to keep the conversation going. But feel free to reach out to us with any sort of questions, comments, maybe suggestions you have. And we'll do our best to respond because we love to interact with you guys. And as long as we keep the conversation going, we can keep topics flowing in, if that makes sense. I probably could have worded that better, but hey.
That's fine. So if we could get some more responses, then maybe we could bring them up at the beginning of the next show and maybe have a little something extra interesting to bring up.
Yeah, like a little fan shout out segment or reading some comments that people had, something like that.
Well, for the time being, we are out, and we will see you soon. And maybe next time we'll update you on the reunion, on the announcement. I don't know if we'll be allowed to say what specifically it is at that point that we start recording again, but if we do, I think we'll seize the chance and we'll tell you about it.
Well, when it comes to being able to announce it or not, I know the year we did Shrek, they did ask us to wait to announce it to anybody for very specific reasons. I think it had to do with them still having to obtain the rights to do it or something along that line. And I think in that particular instance, they did ask us to wait. But I think in most cases, they are okay with us telling people the same day. But I'm sure when the reunion comes and they make the announcement, we can ask them if we're allowed to say anything right away or not.
Oh, yeah. Or maybe if they don't want us to, they'll tell us. I don't know. Maybe if they don't say anything, a thing we can ask.
Oh yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right. All right. Until next time, we'll see you and take care.
So long, everybody, and we can't wait to tell you what the show is.